Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Dynasty After Dark. We're your hosts, Calvin Timms and Dale Terry. Find us over on Twitter at TDC_Calvin and at Dynasty_Dale. And I'm excited because we are finally getting into the NFC with my second favorite team. And we're going to be kicking this off with the Chicago Bears in our 2023 offseason recap series that we've been doing all month here. Thank you guys for joining us here today. And I'm excited because the Bears, man, they came into the 2023 offseason with so much money. And, I was just checking the salary caps for the teams here just a couple minutes ago, and they're still number one. They have 31 million. They're looking like they're going to roll a lot of it over into next year, and they're going to be able to kind of run the table for the next couple off seasons with guys that they want to add. So it's exciting, especially if you're a Bears fan. It looks like the team is trying to get it together and actually be relevant under Ryan Poles. So it's only good times ahead. Dale, how we doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great, and I am ecstatic to talk about Justin Fields today. I
There's
can't
more
wait.
players than just your Ohio State players. You know that, right?
Wrong, wrong, wrong.
All right. So that said, if this is your first time joining us, thank you guys for checking this out. We are going to be talking about the coaching changes, which, spoiler alert, there wasn't any. There wasn't any front office changes either. So we're going to jump right into some of the free agents and some of the draft stuff there. And then we're going to give all of our thoughts on the positional players for every position at the end of the video. And we're going to talk about who we think is going to be the starting running back, how we value DJ Moore, for example, and some of these other thoughts. So before we get into that, if you can, just please leave a like, a comment on the video, subscribe to the channel. We're going to be putting out a ton of content for you guys all the rest of the offseason up until the actual NFL draft. We're going to be doing some more mock drafts here in the next couple of weeks. We're going to be doing a couple more, probably a couple of redraft mock drafts as well, giving some redraft thoughts as well. And then we're going to be into the season, and that's where we're going to have a lot of fun and be trying to win a couple titles. So that said, Dale, we ready to jump into this?
Absolutely.
All right, so I think it's only natural for this one. And if you're joining us from one of the other videos, thank you guys for coming back. And we appreciate that as well. But with the Bears, this entire offseason was really predicated on the number one overall pick, right? And, it all started with them trading back from 1 to 9, right? With Carolina. In that trade, they were able to get, where's the actual? They traded for the number one overall pick. They got DJ Moore, first and second round in this year's draft, so number 9 and 61. And then a first round selection in next year's draft, so 2024 first round pick, and a 2025 fifth round selection as well. So a massive haul for them to go from 1 to 9. They gave up Bryce Young, obviously, in that trade with Carolina, and they ended up even trading back from 9 to 10 for a fourth round pick. So you don't hate to see that. They just got a free fourth just to trade back one spot with the Eagles. They're at 10. But in that trade, obviously, they got wide receiver DJ Moore. And this is where I wanted to start off. DJ Moore has been all over the board in terms of people's opinions on it. He's never really had a consistent quarterback, and he's always kind of been right in the middle of the pack in terms of wide receivers. The guy's only 26 years old, and he's never had, except for his rookie year, he's never been worse than a wide receiver 2 for Dynasty. What are we thinking about DJ Moore? Should we be more excited about him than people are right now?
I really think we should. I think a lot of that is because of Justin Fields and what he did last year.
Right.
I think unfortunately people think Justin Fields is just a running quarterback, and that's just a big fallacy, and that's been one big frustrating thing for me to see in the dynasty community, people not
Mm.
understanding the talent of Fields, but but on DJ Moore, I believe this is probably the best overall quarterback that he's played with. I mean, he did play with Cam Newton, and a bunch of scrums after that,
Right.
unfortunately. But I think he has the best chance, or like he has the chance to have one of his best years, in the next year or so, really getting that continuity with Field.
What do you think his dynasty ceiling can be? The one downside with DJ Moore, and this is what I think a lot of people are down on him, I've been in the Dynasty community for a couple years now, and I talk about this every single offseason. Certain guys just get exploded in value, right? They get propped up
Yep.
insanely high, and it's not their fault, right? They do nothing to kind of deserve it, but or to deserve the criticism when it doesn't work out. But just a couple years ago, DJ Moore was ranked as the Dynasty wide receiver number 4. He was going in first rounds of startup drafts, and
Wow.
obviously, since that happened, he has not paid off on it, right? And
Right.
it's burned a lot of people. And I think that leads to a lot of the downs on him. But just how high do we think he can go? Personally, I think that, you know, 10 to 12 is probably his limit in this offense.
Mm-hmm.
But
Agreed.
I think that he's going for cheaper than that in terms of value. You look at guys who have
100%.
ranked that highly, right? You've got your Chris Olaves. You could get DJ Moore plus a ton for Chris Olave, or as
Yes.
of right now, you could probably in your dynasty leagues get Chris Olave for Chris Olave. You could get DJ Moore plus a first easily. Am I crazy there?
No, 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 you are. And I do agree that a lot of people are down on DJ Moore, with just it was just bad quarterback play in Carolina that really set him up for failure. Um and so I think the offense as a whole in Chicago, I think is going to be better for him because he has somebody that can throw him the ball and throw it to him consistently. Even for last year when he had all this bad quarterback play, he still finished as the wide receiver 24 in PPR, which
Right.
honestly for a bad year, like that's still not bad. I mean, it's not what you want it to be, obviously, but I can see him having a ceiling, like you said, as a low end wide receiver one. I really think the sweet spot for him is a solid wide receiver two, and that in the dynasty world is very very valuable.
For sure. Now, you look at it, and if you go through the actual draft, right? So obviously they trade back, like we just mentioned. Now, what did they get for that pick? So they brought in Darnell Wright, and he was the first tackle. No, the Cardinals took the first tackle at
Hmm.
7, right? So
At
or
6, yeah.
6. So
Yep.
Darnell Wright was the second tackle. Now this is a big boy, offensive tackle from Tennessee. Um, he should instantly come in to help this offensive line. Now, this is one of the funniest things to me because if you are a big fan of PFF, and there's people out there that are and
Mm,
everything, but PFF actually last year said, oh, the Bears offensive line is actually top 10 in run blocking. And it's like, dude, are we watching the same game? Like, this is how it's hilarious to
right.
me that Justin Fields is getting pressured every other play. And it's like, oh, yeah, he holds the ball long. Well, he holds the ball because none of his wide receivers could get open, like none of them. And that's just the funniest thing about PFF and um, just the logic behind of it. It's like chicken or egg, right? And they always say it's
Yep.
chicken, right? But sometimes you have to wonder if it is the egg that comes first. And that's what this offensive line was. Regardless, though, Darnell Wright should be a massive improvement on the left side of the ball. They should definitely be, they have the other, I think it's Tevin Jenkins, if I remember right, is their other
Yep.
offensive tackle. And I think that those two are going to definitely, Tevin Jenkins is the guard. Those two together, though, should solidify one side of this line massively, right? Now, I don't think it's going to be the best line, but you had an Alex Leatherwood and a couple other guys that they have on this team. Nate Davis is a free agent that they paid a
Hmm.
lot of money to come in here.
Huge,
They're
huge.
trying
Yep.
heavily to improve this offensive line. And if they can get this offensive line to actually be top 10, not just PFF make believe fantasy world top 10, but actually top 10, this offense could be disgusting, right? And it
It
could
really
be
could.
the catalyst for Justin Fields to take that next step, right?
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I think they're trying to set themselves up with all these trades that they're doing, and they have so much money, but I think they're trying to be as strategic as possible with that money so that they're not overspending on the Mike McGlinchey's of the world,
Right.
and
Yeah.
and
Yep.
stuff like that, and trying to be smart and to kind of have a slow play instead of just trying to spend all their money and then they end up in the same position they are.
Yeah, exactly. I'm with you there. So let's quickly touch on some of the other guys because I think that this draft and what Ryan Poles was able to do this year was incredible, in my opinion. And I think
Mm,
this is one of the best off seasons for any of the teams. And I know it's not going to be flashy, but I think what they were
nope.
ultimately able to do as a holistic view from where they were last year, right? Because obviously this team was playing for the number one overall pick. They earned it fair and square. But what they were able to do this offseason, I think that this team is legitimately one offseason away from being NFC North contenders. But
Absolutely.
they took Gervin Dexter, defensive tackle, in the second round. Obviously, they didn't have 32 with the Chase Claypool trade. Defense tackle out of Florida, though. They also took cornerback Tyreek Stevenson from Miami in round 3. They took Zach Pickens, defensive tackle out of South Carolina. Hit the defense hard,
Hard,
hard in free
hard.
agency and the
Yes.
draft. Round 4, they
Agreed.
take Roschon Johnson. Round 4, they also take Tyler Scott. Roschon, running back out of Texas. Tyler Scott, the better wide receiver out of Cincinnati, that the Raiders hilariously took the worst guy at a round
Yeah.
higher. Um, Round 5, they took Noah Sewell, linebacker out of Oregon. They also take Terrell Smith, cornerback in Minnesota. In round 7, they take Travis Bell, defensive tackle out of Kenshaw State. And then Kendall Williamson, cornerback out of Stanford. But you pair that with the free agents, right, that they brought in. And this is where I thought it was incredible. And this is why I really like this holistic of this offseason for this team. Nate Davis, guard, paid him a lot of money, 3 years, $30 million. Defensive end, DeMarcus Walker, brought him in from Tennessee, paid him a decent amount of money as well. Again, hitting the defense very, very hard. TJ Edwards and the other linebacker that they brought in, or where is it? I'm not seeing it here.
Edmonds. Edmonds
Oh,
is the
Tremaine
other
Edmonds.
one.
There he is. Yep.
Yes.
So they
Yes.
brought in
Yep.
two linebackers, TJ Edwards and
Yes.
Tremaine Edmonds, for massive money, right? A
Massive
lot of guys.
contracts.
And
Yes.
people
Yes.
people like, again, PFF, I'm not trying to hate on them too much here, but they said this is the worst because they're paying linebackers and the rest of their defense is flawed. But they filled a lot of those other holes in the
Hmm.
draft and in some of these other cheaper free agent signings as well. Andrew Billings, defensive tackle, they brought him in. He's a little bit older. Travis Homer and Deonta Foreman, a couple of running backs that they brought into the team. They brought in Dylan Cole, another linebacker. They lost Trevor Siemian, but they replaced him with Philip Walker. They brought in, who was the other big name here? Robert Tonyan. They brought him in at tight end, which you like to see that. Now again, he's kind of
Yep.
coming off a big injury, but I think that he still has some talent left in the tank. We kind of saw that he's a good red zone threat as well.
Hmm.
And then the other guy, Rasheem Green, so another defensive player that they brought in as well. So again, they really, really hit on the defensive side of the ball, try to
Hmm.
improve that as much as possible. And, you pair that with the draft. I think this defense is going to be much, much scarier. They were already decent before.
Hmm.
And then with their head coach, Matt Eberflus, this defense is going to be probably top 20, maybe top
I
15.
I I I think it's gonna be. I think it's gonna be legit. And with Ryan Poles, like he's done very well in getting good talent in on the defensive side the past 2 years. So
Right.
I think this defense could really ramp up in a fairly weak NFC, and then they're also going to have a fourth place schedule, so they're not going to
Yeah.
play, as many of the top end teams. So
Right.
I wouldn't be surprised if they were top 10 by the end of the year.
Yeah, the defensive side, right? Now that's where it
Yes,
all kind
yes,
of
agreed,
it
agreed.
call it,
Yes,
it
yeah,
falls on the offense to really live up to that. But
agreed,
again,
agreed.
you look at some of the guys that they lost though, and this is why again I think it was just a very good offseason in general. They lost David Montgomery. It's a running back. They replaced him with Roschon. They replaced him with Deonta Foreman on cheap 1-year deals. Well, Roschon's a draft pick, but they're not really paying either one of those guys much. Riley Reef, they lost him as well to New England, but they replaced him in the first round with Darnell Wright. So, and they even lost Trevor Siemian, but again, not really impactful. The rest of the names that they lost, though, nobody's at all.
Yep.
There's not a single name here that you really even care about at all. So, they're able to keep their guys that they have that are difference makers on the defense and the offensive side of the ball. They bring in new, fresh talent, and they still have a lot of money in free agency. And I just think it was just a stellar offseason in general. Any last thoughts on that?
I mean, I agree. I'm very excited about this team. And I wouldn't be shocked if they are in the playoff hunt come Thanksgiving.
I would not be shocked
It
either.
yeah,
I'm with you.
in my opinion. I don't think they're gonna make the playoffs, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were at least in it around Thanksgiving time.
Yep,
And
I could see it.
that's yeah, so I'm very excited for this team, and I'm really excited for, some of their players that they have, that we're gonna talk about here in a minute.
Yep. So let's just jump right into it. You have 30 seconds to talk about Justin Fields. I am limiting you to 30
Okay.
seconds.
Okay, I'm on the clock. Okay. All right. All right. First of all, I love Justin Fields. He is probably I would say he's the most talented quarterback that they've ever had in Chicago. And
Fair.
that's not saying a whole lot, but
No.
it's really not. So I really think he's going to elevate his game this year, and I think it's going to help that he has a stronger offensive line, and he has actual wide receivers he can throw to that
Mhm.
will catch the ball, and it won't bounce off their face mask every other throw.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
I'm just excited about that he has playmakers around him, because
Yeah.
be- you know, you know, because that's what makes an offense so great, is having good playmakers. Like, you can be this
Right.
fantastic quarterback, but if you don't have talented people to throw to, it's going to end up like it was last year.
Yep. I'm with you. And that's the one thing too, to put, again, what we like to do is I was thinking that, I was thinking about, a lot of these podcasts out there, they have catchphrases, right? Or slogans or something like that. And I want ours to be MIMS. And that stands for make it make sense, right?
Yep.
Because so many takes out there and so many thoughts, they make no sense. And it just, as an engineer, it aggravates me, right?
Yep.
It's why I started
Yep.
this podcast in the first place, right? I want things to make sense. If you're going to lay out a whole take behind some of the stuff, make it make sense, right? And when you put this into context, last year, Justin Fields, okay, they traded for Chase Claypool in season, which is great. He's not
Yep.
that good of an actual wide receiver, but you put that aside. Besides that, Darnell Mooney, good player. Velus
Mhm.
Jones Jr., terrible draft pick. Let's just put it
Yeah,
put it what it
It
was.
was.
Dante Pettis, they had Equanimous St. Brown. They had
Brown.
nobody in terms of wide receiver
Yes.
talent. I like Darnell Mooney, but he's not a number one, and they had nobody else behind him to even make him the number two behind one of those guys, right? You have Cole Kmet, who we like, but again, the offense just as a whole was not good. The offensive line was terrible. Dave Montgomery was banged up for a little bit of time. The run game, they got it moving and cooking, but a run game in the modern NFL is not enough alone to carry you to victories, right?
Yep.
Now, you also take that and you pair it with the fact that Luke Getsy, their offensive coordinator, was a first-time offensive coordinator last year. He's never called plays. He's from the Green Bay Packers. He was with Aaron Rodgers and Matt LaFleur and those guys up there. Good tenure, good recommendations from guys like Aaron Rodgers. The problem is when you take that and you're not really calling all the plays and all that stuff, and you're doing it now on your own, you have to be able to modify your game plan to fit the guys that you have available, right? And you saw that in the first couple of weeks last year. And I know I'm going along here. I'll let you talk here in just a minute, but I don't think it's a coincidence that weeks 1 through 4 were Justin Fields' worst weeks fantasy-wise. After week 4, they realize what a threat he is with his legs. You pair that with the limited amount in every single game. And obviously they didn't win any of these games. So what they were doing wasn't enough, but they might not have been trying to win necessarily. But for fantasy football, in week 5, ever since that week till the end of the season, he missed the game against the Jets. He had 1 week under 17 points. They realized what they had in Justin Fields, how special he is as a runner. You tap into that, and now you have actual playmakers around him. Luke Getsy has a chance to actually show some of Justin Fields' arm that we all kind of believe that he might have. So, that's my diatribe here. I'm with you. I think Justin Fields, sky's the limit. I love this guy. I have a Justin Fields jersey my wife got me. I love it. So I'm super happy. Clean number one right there. Second
Hmm.
favorite team. I've just never been able to root for the Bears because they've been garbage for my
Garbage, yes.
entire
A,
life,
a long, a
literally.
long, long time. Yes,
Yeah.
agreed.
So, all right. So Justin Fields is going to be a stud. If anyone is doubting Justin Fields, go pick him up, trade for him because those guys are crazy. They're going to be
Hmm.
missing out on a very good player. We'll just put it that way.
Yes.
All right, running back wise, let's jump over to that now. This is where it's kind of scary because it's a three-headed monster.
Yes.
Roschon Johnson, Deonta Foreman, Khalil Herbert, Travis Homer is even in there. I'd put him clearly as the number 4 guy. Who
Yeah.
is the one
Yeah.
that you want of these three at cost, right? And then,
Right.
yeah, I guess give me your
I
thoughts on these three
I I,
guys.
w- I would say probably because I really feel that a lot of people love Roschon Johnson, which I do too.
Yeah,
I think he's very talented, but he's getting a lot of hype. But in a lot of rookie drafts, like he's going, like
third,
top
early
end,
third, yeah.
yeah, early third round, which I would love that. So and then like with Khalil Herbert, I think anymore you could probably get him for just about the same price. Like, it's an early mid third for him. So you know, I feel all these guys are a very similar price in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I think of the guys I would probably want. I think if I were to want a guy year one, it would be Herbert since he's more familiar with the offense.
Yep.
And he's going to be the guy I think in the beginning of the year, but I think it's eventually going to go to Roschon. And I do think Foreman is going to be interesting, but he is older. He's 27.
Right.
And he has had he does have an injury history past, which it is what it is. So,
Yeah, that's
but
the.
I
Go ahead.
yeah, but I would think overall, I think I would want to invest in Roschon Johnson.
Yeah, that's what I was just pulling up really quickly. So Roschon Johnson, he's someone he's interesting, but here's the problem. He was behind Bijan Robinson.
Yep.
And
Yep.
Bijan, obviously, world-class player. In his entire college career, he only had 392 carries through all 4 seasons. And it's just, 2,000 yards, 5.6 a clip, right? 23 touchdowns. He was an efficient player, but it's just not it wasn't a ton of volume, right? That's the
Yeah. Yeah.
only problem there. And you got guys like if you go and you look, right? Guys like Bijan in 1 year had almost had almost the same number of carries as Roschon did in his entire career. So that's
Right.
the only potential downside is you're just making a bet on a guy that we don't really know a lot about. So I'm probably with you though that I would want Roschon Johnson, followed by probably Deonta Foreman at cost. Um,
Yeah.
Deonta Foreman showed a few stretches. They wouldn't have brought him in if they thought Khalil Herbert was primed and ready to take over this entire offense. And,
Nope.
you know, Khalil Herbert played a few games where David Montgomery was injured last year, but his games were very limited in terms of what they actually were. He had one game where he had 2 touchdowns and 157 yards for 32 fantasy points. But other than that, he never even broke 16 points. So I think that people are looking at that one game and kind of extrapolating, oh, that's what he's going to do every week. But it's not, right?
It's not.
So I think that,
And
go
and
ahead.
and, and talent wise, like he was a sixth rounder a couple years ago.
Right.
So, it's not like they have a lot of draft capital in him. And I think I would prefer to invest in somebody that has a little bit more draft capital,
Right.
and then they also did pay Foreman to come in too.
Right.
So,
It's a 1 year deal, like
yeah,
$2 million. So it's not a ton,
right,
but yeah,
right.
I'm with you. I'm probably avoiding this for the most part or taking a stab on Roschon Johnson. I think that's kind of where I'm
Agreed.
at personally.
100%. Yes. Yes.
Wide receivers, obviously, we already talked about DJ Moore. Chase Claypool, I don't like personally if I'm going for
No.
another guy in this offense. I'm actually probably not even going Darnell Mooney. I actually think I'm going Tyler Scott. I like Tyler Scott a lot, and I get it. He was a fourth round pick. Oh, these guys are never going to do anything. Yeah, so was Amon-Ra St. Brown. It's just they this team focused the other position, the defensive side of the ball, so heavily in the first couple of rounds. And I get it. Like, they had opportunities to take Tyler Scott before that or another wide receiver, but I think that they felt comfortable taking Tyler Scott in the fourth round. And I don't think that's a death sentence like a lot of people think it is, right? So I think that Tyler Scott has potential here. He seems like the Mooney replacement potentially to me long term, where I think if Mooney doesn't really pan out, I think that's, or basically when the contract comes up for Mooney, right? Which is, I think, one more year. I think he has next year, and then he's up for a new contract. I think they could just let him walk and roll with someone like a Tyler Scott instead. So I'm probably only investing in DJ Moore and then Tyler Scott. And Tyler Scott's like a third or even a fourth round rookie pick
Yep.
for most people out there.
Yep.
So let's quickly jump on the tight end, Cole Kmet. What are your thoughts on him?
I think it's a make or break year for him.
You know what's
I think
crazy?
he's
Really
yeah,
quickly, Cole
yeah.
Kmet finished as the tight end number 7 last
That's wild. That's wild. That's I mean, and that shows you how
year.
volatile the tight end position is,
Yep.
because honestly, like, it felt like he had a pretty this poor
Bad.
year.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, I think he could be a very good tight end in this offense, and I've always been excited about him.
Right.
I think he can be very good. It's just staying on the field. Like, he did have a
Right.
couple games where like he had 25 points in a couple games.
Right.
I think he could be really good and
I
really
agree.
solid.
I agree. Yeah.
So, and then with that, like, I just think I just believe that his receptions are just going to go up. His targets are probably going to go back to where they were in 21. So, and he's just going to have more yards and more touchdowns. So, I'm really excited about him.
Right. Yeah. The only problem with him is, his yards per target were really low. And this is kind of the
Right.
problem with the offense as a whole. I think the offensive line, and again, this is why it's funny to me. The PFF is like, oh, it's a really good line. They're dumping the ball off as quickly as they possibly can to get the ball out of
Yeah.
Justin Fields' hands. It's like, okay, they're making successful plays, but that's not because the offensive line is good. They're just doing this
Right.
because they have to, right? You rebuild this offensive line, you get Justin Fields a little bit of time to see stuff down the field or plays to develop and everything like that. I think that
Hmm.
that could help. And I think that, you saw a very, very low yard per target for Cole Kmet last year. But again, like I mentioned before, Luke Getsy, first time ever being an offensive coordinator. Cole Kmet for the first 7 games, didn't really even have, he was on the field almost every time, every game, but he was not being prominent at all. In week number 9, they finally kind of realized that he's a weapon. 6 targets in that game. Before that, the highest was 4, right? And
Hmm.
that was one game. Everything else was 2 or 3. And he is a good weapon, and when you're lacking weapons, they should have been going to him a little bit more. 6 targets, 7 targets, multiple games over 6 and 7 targets. I think that they realize that they have a little bit more of a weapon, especially in the red zone. That's where he was able to pick up a lot of touchdowns. He finished with 7 touchdowns in 8 games, right? Or
Hmm.
9 games, sorry. So I think that there's potential there, and the fact that he finished 7 was just hilarious to me.
Right. I agree.
All right, so Cole Kmet, I think there's some potential value. I think that you could probably get him a little bit cheaper, with some potential ceiling, right? So
Hmm.
mid to late second, and I think that's more than fair. If you're in a tight end premium, maybe it's an early second, but I think you could have him for an early second and feel pretty good about it personally, especially if this
Agreed.
offense takes a step forward. I think that Cole Kmet could easily be the number 3 in targets behind DJ Moore, Darnell Mooney, and then Cole Kmet. And then in the red zone, I could see him being almost the number 1 target for this team. So we saw a lot of connections with him and Justin Fields at the end of the year. Do you
Agree.
agree?
No, no, I completely agree with that. I mean, I do agree that he's he's either going to be second or third on targets,
Yeah.
and I really do expect that Justin Fields is going to have a lot more attempts this year. It's to be honest, and I really think this offense is going to start flowing earlier than what it did last year. Well, I mean, it didn't really even flow last year, to be honest.
Right.
But yeah, it was pretty hard to watch at times. But do you have any interest in Robert Tonyan at all?
We'll see. I have to
Okay,
see it before I'm willing to buy in. He's older
that's very
and he's
fair.
coming off the Achilles tear, if I remember right, or ACL just a couple years ago.
Let's
So
see.
you can check that out. But yeah, I'm not that
Yes.
thrilled personally. They signed him
Hmm.
to a low contract, so
Yep.
they're not really committed to him financially, and he's a good
Right.
blocker. So I think that could be more freeing up Cole Kmet a little bit more because
Right.
Cole Kmet played like 90+% of snaps last year. He was on the field a ton, and that's where I think that they were just using him as a stopgap because he had to block, and that's where I think Robert Tonyan could come in and spell him a little bit so he's not completely worn out the entire game for blocking everybody. So
Agreed.
um, yeah, I think he's more of a team ad, but not really a fantasy.
Fair enough.
Any last thoughts, or we can wrap this one up?
Send it on home.
All right. So thank you guys so much for joining us here for our recap on the Chicago Bears 2023 offseason. Like I said, this is my second favorite team. I grew up right outside of Chicago, and it stinks because they were always terrible my entire life. And I know they had the 1 year in 2008 where they go and get blown out in the Super Bowl by Peyton Manning, but, I'm excited for them to actually be good. And I believe in Justin Fields and the talent. And I think that this offense is going to take another step. Obviously, Dale does too because he's an Ohio State fan, but also because we both believe that Justin Fields is good. But
Yes.
you can see this season with the rest of us, and we'll see how it kind of all plays out. Again, if you can, just leave a like, comment, subscription on the video. Hit us up on Twitter at Dynasty After Dark, at TDC_Calvin, at Dynasty_Dale. We appreciate you guys so much for joining us. And until next time, have a good night.